Millionaire woman is forced into an arranged marriage, but she falls for the poor waiter at her own wedding. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite at the Plaza Hotel, casting long shadows across the marble floor where Victoria Ashford stood in her wedding dress. At 28, she was the sole heiress to the Ashford fortune, a business empire built on steel and determination that had survived 3 generations. Today, she would marry Richard Blackwell III, a man she had met exactly 4 times. Victoria's reflection stared back at her from the ornate mirror, a woman who had graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School, who had single-handedly saved her family's company from bankruptcy 2 years prior, who spoke 4 languages and had been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. Yet here she stood, dressed like a doll for a transaction disguised as a wedding. The arrangement had been her father's dying wish, orchestrated from his hospital bed 6 months ago. Charles Ashford had built his empire through strategic alliances, and even in death, he sought to secure his daughter's future through the oldest alliance of all, marriage. The Blackwell family owned the largest shipping company on the East Coast, and together, the 2 families would control a significant portion of American commerce. What Victoria hadn't anticipated was her stepmother Eleanor's ruthless enforcement of this wish. Eleanor, who had married into the Ashford name 20 years ago, now held the keys to Victoria's inheritance. The will was clear. Victoria would receive her full inheritance only upon marriage to a man deemed suitable by the family. Board aboard Eleanor, now controlled with an iron fist. Victoria had tried to fight it. She had consulted lawyers, searched for loopholes, even considered walking away from everything. But Eleanor had been thorough. The family's charitable foundation, which supported thousands of underprivileged children, would be dissolved. The company's pension fund, which supported hundreds of retired workers, would be liquidated. Victoria's personal assets had been frozen until the wedding took place. She was trapped by her own compassion, her sense of responsibility to those who depended on the Ashford legacy. Eleanor had played her perfectly, knowing that Victoria would never allow innocent people to suffer for her rebellion. The wedding preparations had been a whirlwind of forced smiles and hollow congratulations. Victoria had thrown herself into the details, demanding perfection in every aspect of the ceremony. If she was going to be sold, she reasoned, at least it would be done with dignity and style. Richard Blackwell III was not an unpleasant man. He was handsome in a conventional way, educated, well-mannered, and utterly predictable. Their conversations were polite exchanges about business, the weather, and their respective social circles. He seemed content with the arrangement, viewing it as a sensible merger rather than a romantic entanglement. Victoria supposed she should be grateful for his pragmatic approach, but his indifference only highlighted the emptiness of what lay ahead. The ceremony at St. Patrick's Cathedral was a masterpiece of orchestrated emotion. 600 guests filled the pews, representing the elite of New York society. Victoria walked down the aisle with mechanical precision, her smile fixed in place as cameras flashed and whispers of approval rippled through the crowd. She spoke, her vows in a clear, steady voice, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. Throughout the ceremony, Victoria's mind wandered to the life she was leaving behind. Her dreams of expanding the company internationally, of using her wealth to create meaningful change, of perhaps one day finding love on her own terms, all of it seemed to slip away with each word of the traditional vows. The reception was held at the family's estate in the Hamptons, a sprawling mansion that had been in the Ashford family for 3 generations. The property overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and on clear days, Victoria could see the horizon stretching endlessly beyond the manicured gardens. As a child, she had often stood at that window, dreaming of the adventures that awaited her beyond those waters. Now, as she stood in the grand ballroom, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and imported flowers, Victoria felt further from those dreams than ever. The guests mingled around her, their laughter and conversation creating a soundtrack to her confinement. She moved through the crowd like a ghost at her own funeral, accepting congratulations and best wishes with a grace that had been drilled into her since childhood. The elaborate reception was a testament to the Ashford family's attention to detail. Every element had been carefully curated to reflect their status and sophistication. The waitstaff moved with practiced efficiency, ensuring that every guest's needs were met with seamless precision. Victoria had insisted on hiring the best catering company in the city, and they had delivered beyond expectations. As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself increasingly isolated, despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. Richard was charming the business associates, discussing potential synergies and future partnerships. Eleanor held court with the society matrons, basking in the success of her orchestrated union. Victoria felt like a beautiful ornament in her own life, admired but not truly seen, the weight of her future pressed down on her shoulders. This was her life now, series of social obligations, charity galas, and board meetings. She would be expected to produce an heir, to support Richard's career, to be the perfect wife to complement his perfect life. The thought made her chest tighten with a mixture of panic and despair. As the first dance approached, Victoria excused herself and stepped onto the terrace overlooking the ocean. The cool evening air was a relief after the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom. She stood there for a moment, letting the sea breeze lift the delicate fabric of her veil, watching the waves crash against the shore in their endless, predictable rhythm. For the first time all day, Victoria allowed herself to feel the full weight of her situation. She was now Mrs. Richard Blackwell III, a title that would define her for the rest of her life. The independent, ambitious woman who had once dreamed of conquering the world had been reduced to an accessory in someone else's story. The sound of footsteps behind her interrupted her thoughts. She turned, expecting to see Richard or Eleanor, coming to collect her for the next phase of the evening's festivities. Instead, she found herself face to face with a young man in a server's uniform, carrying a tray of champagne glasses. The young man stopped abruptly when he saw her, clearly not expecting to find the bride standing alone on the terrace. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and an easy smile that seemed genuinely warm rather than the calculated charm she had grown accustomed to throughout the evening. His name tag read Michael, and unlike everyone else she had encountered that day, he seemed completely unaware of the social protocols that governed interactions with the Ashford family. Victoria found herself studying his face with unexpected curiosity. There was something refreshingly authentic about his presence, a quality she had almost forgotten existed. He appeared to be close to her age, perhaps a few years younger, with the kind of honest features that spoke of genuine character. Rather than careful breeding, Michael seemed to realize he was staring and quickly collected himself, offering a respectful nod. He moved to retreat, clearly understanding that he had inadvertently intruded on a private moment. But something in Victoria's expression must have stopped him, because he hesitated at the threshold between the terrace and the ballroom. Without thinking, Victoria gestured toward the tray he was carrying, accepting a glass of champagne she didn't particularly want. The simple act of being served by someone who wasn't treating her like a fragile piece of porcelain was oddly comforting. Michael's movements were efficient and graceful, speaking of someone accustomed to hard work and attention to detail. As he prepared to leave, Victoria found herself speaking, asking about his work with the catering company. His response was refreshingly direct and unpretentious. He explained that he was working his way through graduate school, studying social work at Columbia University. His passion for helping others was evident in the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about his studies and his dreams of opening a community center in his neighborhood. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Victoria had experienced in years. Michael spoke to her not as an heiress or a symbol of wealth and privilege, but as a person. He asked about her interests, her thoughts on various topics, and seemed genuinely interested in her responses. For the first time all day, Victoria felt like herself rather than a character in someone else's story. Michael's background was worlds away from her own. He had grown up in a working-class family in Queens, where his mother worked as a nurse and his father drove a city bus. He had earned his way through college with a combination of scholarships, part-time jobs, and determination. His stories of community, struggle, and simple joy painted a picture of a life Victoria had never known, but found herself envying. As they talked, Victoria realized that Michael possessed something she had lost somewhere along the way: hope. Despite the challenges he faced, despite working multiple jobs to fund his education, he maintained an optimistic outlook on life and a genuine desire to make a positive difference in the world. His dreams were modest by her standards, but filled with a purpose that her own privileged existence had somehow lacked. The contrast between Michael's authentic warmth and the cold calculation that had surrounded her all day was striking. While her wedding guests saw dollar signs and social advancement, Michael saw a person standing alone on a terrace, looking lost and sad. His concern appeared genuine, unmarked by any knowledge of what she could do for him or what he might gain from her favor. Their conversation was interrupted several times by other staff members who needed Michael's attention, and each time he excused himself with a courtesy that seemed natural rather than rehearsed. Victoria found herself watching him work, observing the way he interacted with his colleagues with respect and good humor. Even in his role as a server, he maintained his dignity and treated everyone around him with kindness. As the evening progressed, Victoria made excuses to step out onto the terrace, hoping to continue their unexpected connection. Each conversation revealed new layers to Michael's character: his devotion to his family, his volunteer work at a local soup kitchen, his love of literature and art, despite never having had the resources to pursue them formally. He spoke of beauty found in simple moments and of the importance of human connection in a way that made Victoria's world of luxury and privilege feel hollow by comparison. Michael, for his part, seemed to sense the sadness beneath Victoria's perfect exterior. He didn't pry or ask invasive questions, but his attentiveness suggested he understood that her wedding day was not bringing her the joy such occasions were supposed to provide. His presence offered a brief respite from the performance she had been giving all day, a moment of genuine human connection in an evening full of obligatory social interactions. The irony was not lost on Victoria. On the day she was supposed to be celebrating the beginning of her new life, she found herself more engaged in conversation with a stranger than she had ever been with her new husband. Michael's stories of his community, his aspirations, and his genuine care for others highlighted everything that was missing from her carefully constructed world. As the reception began to wind down, Victoria realized that her brief encounters with Michael had been the only genuine moments of happiness she had experienced all day. The thought filled her with both gratitude and a deep sense of loss. Tomorrow she would return to her gilded cage, and Michael would return to his life of honest work and noble dreams. But something had shifted in those conversations on the terrace. Victoria had been reminded of what it felt like to connect with another person on a human level, to be seen and appreciated for who she was rather than what she represented. The feeling was both exhilarating and terrifying, opening a door in her heart that she had thought was permanently sealed. As the last guests departed and the staff began cleaning up, Victoria found herself searching for Michael among the workers. When she finally spotted him collecting glasses from abandoned tables, she felt a pang of regret so sharp it almost took her breath away. In a few hours he would disappear from her life forever, taking with him the possibility of genuine connection she had never known. She was missing the realization that she was falling for someone she had just met, someone whose world was completely different from her own, someone she could never be with, hit her with unexpected force. Victoria had always prided herself on being rational and practical, But Michael had awakened something in her that defied logic and convention. As she was finally led away by Richard and Eleanor to begin her new life as Mrs. Blackwell, Victoria turned back one last time to catch a glimpse of Michael. Their eyes met across the ballroom, and in that moment, she saw her own longing reflected in his gaze. The connection between them was undeniable, even if it was impossible. Standing at the threshold of her future, Victoria faced the most difficult decision of her life. She could continue down the path that had been laid out for her, honoring her family's wishes and maintaining the security that came with conformity. Or she could follow her heart toward an uncertain future with a man who had shown her what love could actually feel like. The choice would define not just her future, but the kind of person she would become. In Michael, she had glimpsed a life of purpose, authenticity, and genuine connection. The question now was whether she had the courage to reach for it, knowing that doing so might cost her everything she had been raised to value. As the evening ended and her new life as a married woman began, Victoria carried with her the memory of those precious moments on the terrace. Whatever happened next, Michael had given her something invaluable, the knowledge that real love was possible, and that she deserved more than the cold transaction her life had become. The ocean waves continued their eternal rhythm outside her window, and for the first time in years, Victoria wondered what lay beyond the horizon. The answer, she realized, might be worth everything she would have to sacrifice to find it. End of story.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.